Good afternoon, or good morning, I should say. Everybody, welcome to our third pep talk. My name is Gert-Jan Scheers, and I'll be your host today. Pep talks are an initiative of WCC, and we aim to facilitate the exchange of knowledge between public employment services all over the world. And actually today we have people from 16 different countries who joined us for this pep talk. So everybody, welcome to this pep talk. Today's topic is ESCO, but before we dive into the world of ESCO, I have three things I would like to mention before we start that. This is a live interactive webinar, and so you can ask questions during this webinar. You will see in your screen an orange button saying ask questions, so that's obvious. If you click on it, there opens a small window and you can ask questions, and we'll try to answer all your questions during this webinar. If not, then we'll make an email to everybody where we can still try to answer your questions, and you can see them in this email. We'll also ask you some questions. We have two polls ready for you, and we have a call to action. If you miss something during the 45 minutes and you still want to watch it again, well, that's possible, because this webinar will be available on demand. So that means that in the coming days, or the next year if you want, you can still watch this webinar again. Or you can use the link by giving it to a colleague. Maybe one of your colleagues also is interested in this topic. So you can always watch it again. Last webinar, the audience asked, we asked the audience, are there any topics that you would like to have for the next webinar? And a lot of people said, well, can't you do something on ESCO? So we're very proud today to have two people who probably know more about ESCO than anybody else in the world, and I would like to introduce two people to you right now. That is Martin Levrang and Angeliki Dedopoulou. And please introduce yourself before we start the webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. My name is Martin Levrang, and I work as the team leader and project manager for ESCO in the European Commission, in the Directorate General Employment, in a unit called Skills and Qualifications. And I'm doing this already for about 6 years, so I have seen the entire development process of the ESCO classification throughout that time.
Hello, Gert-Jan. My name is Angeliki Dedopoulou. I'm taxonomy consultant to the Commission for the ESCO project for the last 3 years, and I'm contributing together with the team on the development of ESCO.
Okay, Martin, I'll hand the clicker to you so you can start the show.
Yes, so thank you very much. Thank you really for giving us also this this opportunity to present ESCO to the audience and in particular to the employment services. And we are of course very pleased to hear that also in the last session that this was a request from the audience to learn more about ESCO. So here we are, and we would like to give you an introduction to ESCO and explain you a bit the classification and the project as such. So let's take a first look at what is ESCO, what is ESCO about, and let's start by deciphering the acronym of ESCO. ESCO stands for European Skills, Competences, Qualifications and Occupations, and it is a multilingual classification. On this image you can see the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone, an ancient decree that was issued in 3 different languages, in 3 ancient languages, and that contains the same information in these 3 languages. And this helped the archaeologists to understand and to decipher these different languages. So what we are trying to do with ESCO is a bit like developing a Rosetta Stone for the labor market and for education and training. So something that contains the same information in different languages, and that helps us to understand each other. Why do we need this? Basically, we need this because if we look at Europe today, we have a lot of national systems that are used for job matching, but maybe also for finding training opportunities, for career guidance. And these systems were developed using of course, using the domestic language, but also using national classification systems, using national standards. And the result of this is that these systems cannot communicate to each other. They cannot talk to each other. They cannot easily exchange information. And this means that a job seeker from one country cannot easily find a job in another country simply for the reason that the systems do not easily talk to each other. And it also means that the communication between the labor market on the one side and education and training on the other side is hindered by different ways of communicating, different terminology. So what we are putting in place with ESCO as a solution is a common reference language that can be used in these scenarios, that can be used to understand each other and to make these systems talk to each other. And ESCO, for this purpose, takes form of combining three different pillars. So in ESCO, we have an occupations pillar, we have a skills pillar, which also includes knowledge, skills, and competences. So it's a wide interpretation of the term skills. It includes knowledge areas and competences. And we have a qualifications pillar. It's not a coincidence that the skills pillar is in the center, because in the end, this is what makes the language that is well understood by the labor market, but that also the education and training system can relate to by expressing what a certain training leads to in terms of knowledge, skills, and competences, and this can be well understood by employers of how it relates to their requirements. So what we have in ESCO is 3,000 occupations in the occupations pillar, each one in 26 languages. Then in the first version of ESCO, we will have around 13,500 knowledge, skills, and competence concepts. And then we have the qualifications pillar, which is a bit of a different nature, because there it's not concepts that we describe on a European level. So we don't describe what an occupation or we describe what an occupation or what a specific skill is. But for the qualifications, it's more an effort of collecting the information that is available elsewhere, and in particular in the member states, and making sure that this can be easily accessed on European level and used by people. So in the end, what ESCO is about, it's about explaining concepts in a similar way like a dictionary. Like a dictionary that explains you what a carpenter is or does. We do the same thing in ESCO. So if we look at an example of an occupation in ESCO, here we have the child daycare worker. Basically what we do is we explain what this occupation is about. So each of these occupations comes with information like a short description. It comes with synonyms, and these synonyms also in 26 different languages. It comes with information of how it relates to the International Standard Classification of Occupations, and also what are the knowledge, skills, and competence concepts that are frequently used in this occupation, that are frequently demanded by employers when recruiting for such an occupation. And we record similar information also on the knowledge, skills, and competences in the skills pillar. So also each of these 13,500 skills comes with 26 and comes in 26 languages, and it comes with a short description explaining the skill concept. So I would like now to move to the next topic, which is basically the question of how ESCO can be used. But before I go in detail, I will hand over to you, Katjan, because I think this is where we want to bring the audience in.
Exactly. Thank you. Because as you can see, there's a lot of work being done making ESCO, but how are you going to use ESCO? If you already have some ideas, well, we've put some questions for you. Do you want to use it for cross-border matching, job matching, or domestic competence-based job matching, or maybe for career guidance and search for training offers? Research and labor market intelligence, enrich national classifications. Well, please pick your favorite one, and later we'll be back telling you what you voted for.
So as you can already see from this question, there are quite a lot of different use cases, a lot of different ways how ESCO can be used. And basically we see ESCO as a useful tool for employment services, public and private employment services, in particular for job matching, for competence-based job matching, and also job matching across different language barriers. It could be used by job boards, in HR software, for career guidance in order to identify training opportunities or career paths, for labor market intelligence, statistics, big data analysis, or in research. And what these use cases have in common, and what has changed maybe over the last 20 years, is that maybe 20 years ago a lot of this happened on paper, but nowadays a lot of that happens online. It happens in digital tools. So the way how we developed ESCO is that it is a classification system that is fit for the digital age, that can be deployed directly in components, in software components, in web portals, and used for these different purposes. And also this digitization of how the labor market processes, or also processes in education and training work. This also has a specific new challenge, which is that in the moment where a job seeker is looking for a job, it's not one actor that is involved, it's a variety of actors. So the job seeker might use one service to create the professional profile or the CV, maybe in a software tool, maybe online. They might then turn to a search engine in order to do their job search. Then the search engine maybe will forward them to a job board, so they will continue searching there. Maybe they will go to the public employment service for some personal advice, or also for help with the matching, with the job search and job matching process. At the same time, the employers might use HR systems that are automatically searching in different databases. They might expect the application from the job seeker online through their own web portal. Which means that in the end, before the person gets a job, a lot of microtransactions are happening, a lot of different services need to play together and need to communicate to each other. And the idea with ESCO is that it can help by providing a common reference language for these services to interact in a seamless way. I think here we will take a look then at the poll results.
Yes, and I think from the poll results, we find that domestic competence-based job matching is favored. Did you expect that, or?
Yeah, maybe it's not what I expected, but it's not a complete surprise either. The thing is, what we can see in the landscape of classifications all over Europe, over the 28 member states, is that a lot of member states have skills classifications in place, have skills lists in place, but there are also member states who don't, or who are only just starting to develop skills lists. And I think for these member states, it's very interesting that ESCO has these occupations and the skills pillar, and can already help them to bring in a skills terminology in their own language to start competence-based job matching, or to improve competence-based job matching on a national level.
I think when I look at the numbers here, I think the second most important one that I notice is exactly what you're telling, is enriching national classifications.
Yeah, and I think here it's also important that even if there is a national classification that exists on skills, that the matching algorithms can also be improved by simply adding information from other vocabularies and other classifications. So I think that's an important use case of ESCO. For us, of course, from the European level, the cross-border job matching is also quite essential, and there it depends also a bit on the member state of how important it is in the work of the employment service. So how many of the job seekers are really coming from abroad or are interested in working abroad.
Well, I see that it's a good shared second place for cross-border job matching, and enriching national classifications. The research and labor market intelligence, nobody says we want to use it for that.
Yeah, I think in research and labor market intelligence, one of the most interesting cases to use it for is big data analysis. Because in the moment where we want to analyze millions of job vacancies, we need the terminology that helps us to cluster and to categorize the content of these job vacancies for analysis. And here it's particularly interesting if you want to analyze the supply and demand of skills. So if you don't want to stay only at the occupation level, but you really want to look into what are the specific skills that the employers in one sector, in one economic sector, are asking for. and in particular also if you want to compare results across borders. So if we want to get a picture of what is the skills supply and demand in different areas of Europe, then a multilingual classification of skills is what we need to combine with big data analysis.
I think we need to tell more about the people that it's also very useful for this purpose. Okay, let's go back to the presentation.
So this illustration shows where we stand with ESCO at the moment. We almost reached the top. We almost were one step before the publication of the classification. A common effort of almost 6 years, and we almost there.
Is that actually Martin and yourself and on that?
Well, almost. We represent also a huge team behind.
It's the Commission and the Member States.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
But good point, Gert-Jan. So for the development of the classification, we consulted various groups, various stakeholders, and the ESCO board, which it's an expert group which provided to us strategic advice and advice on the communication aspects of the classification. The ESCO Maintenance Committee, which provided technical advice to the Commission, but also help us a lot on the quality assurance of the classification. For the matter of fact, we will also have tomorrow a meeting with them in Brussels, where we discuss the final steps before the publication. We also consulted, and the Commission set up 12 reference groups that was composed by various stakeholders, by social partners, but also with stakeholders that come from the different sector of the economy. Well, we consulted around 200 experts. We also set up an online consultation process where we engaged around 900 experts, again, focusing on the different sectors of the economy. One important aspect of the ESCO classification is the quality assurance process. In order to be sure that the quality is there, we took into consideration the ESCO guidelines. We reviewed around 4,000 comments that we received from the stakeholders. The whole team went comment by comment, suggestion per suggestion, to really understand and reflect all these comments and suggestions to the classification and be sure that it's fit for purpose for its various end users and applications. We also did a gap analysis against the 8 national classification systems. For example, Rome from France, Berufenet from Germany, and from other classification from Sweden, and so on. We piloted and tested the classification after developing the content and quality assured the content, but I will also go more into detail later on in my slides, in my presentation. We consulted after the translation of the content in 26 languages. We also made sure that we cross-checked it with our terminological guidelines. And in cooperation with the member states, with representatives of the member states, the Commission established 2 rounds of consultation. The first round focusing on the occupation side, and the second round on skills. And now I will pass to you, Gert-Jan, for the next.
Thank you. Well, before we go to the poll, I have a question from the audience, and I'm interested in finding out also, are you aware of big data analysis projects doing skills discovery and linking it to ESCO?
Yes, so actually on the Commission side and organized by CEDEFOP, that is the European Center for the Development of Vocational Education and Training in Thessaloniki. CEDEFOP was conducting a feasibility study for big data analysis, harvesting job vacancies in cooperation with job sites, job boards from 5 different member states, and they collected around 7.5 million job vacancies and analyzed them at that moment still with a demo version of ESCO, so with a pilot classification, with a pilot version of the classification. But this project is intended to continue, and intended to continue also with a full version of ESCO. And this is, on the one hand, it's interesting to see then how in the different member states, maybe for the same type of occupation, the skill sets differ. So you can see differences between member states recruiting in the same occupation, that maybe in one member state you have more focus already on digital tools or on foreign languages, while on the other member states maybe more in classical manufacturing. And it's also interesting for us for enriching the classification, because what they also do is they record things that have been recognized as potentially skills, knowledge, competences, but that could not be found in the classification. So it will also help us for the enrichment of the classification. Yeah, so we are very curious to continue with this project, and in particular with a European view and a comparison of different member states.
Okay, thank you. Then it's up to you again. We have a question for you. What challenges do you expect implementing ESCO? Because, as you know, it is something you will have to do. Lack of resources, could that be a problem? Or maybe technical challenges, the conceptual challenges, political, legal? Well, there's even a cop-out as the last one as others. Please cast your vote now, and within a few slides we'll come back to you with the results. Back to you.
So in the meantime, while we are waiting for the results, let me then also talk a bit about the implementation of ESCO, and in particular to put ESCO in the context of EURES, so of this network of European employment services. I think most of you know EURES. It's a cooperation of the employment services, and at this stage mainly the public employment services from all member states. And one big or one important goal of EURES is to help job seekers that want to move to another European member state and work there, to find jobs and to get also some personalized advice. And actually, this cooperation of the employment services already dates back many years. Before EURES, there was already a cooperation mechanism at that time in the European Union with 6 member states. And already at that time, there was it was clear that when you want to exchange job vacancies, understand the job vacancies of another country, you need to understand the classification system of the other country. So what you can see on this slide is a kind of by now a historical document that puts in relation the 6 national classifications of the member states at that time, in at that time only 4 languages. But in essence, it's the same thing that we are trying to do with ESCO and how we help EURES now, with the difference that we do it with 26 instead of 4 languages. That adds a bit to the challenge, that we do it in a digital environment, and that we also have this aspect of connecting it better to the education and training sector.
Do you think that this question fits then this slide? Because I have from Ms. Müller, how did ESCO make sure that the skills profiles of occupations are frequently demanded skills by employers? And has this data been collected systematically on European level, for instance, via EURES, or is it based on the input of experts?
Yes. So for the initial development of ESCO, for the first version of ESCO, it's based on expert assessment. So we put in place groups that are really just dealing with one economic sector, with bringing together experts of that economic sector, first in physical settings. Later on, we move towards an online mechanism. But basically, it's working with the input from stakeholders, from experts. And to another very important aspect is the input coming from national classification systems. Since there are already many national classification systems in place, we looked at them and used this also as an important source for information. Later on, we will talk about the continuous improvement of ESCO, so how we will keep this information up to date. And there, direct information from EURES or from big data will play a role. We will come back to that point. Okay. I also would like to just make clear once more that, that the occupational profiles in ESCO do not have any normative role. So they are a kind of collection of knowledge, skills and competence concepts that could be relevant for this occupation. But of course, if an employer wants to combine in a job two different occupations or has specific needs, the employer can also make use of the other 13,500 knowledge, skills and competences that are described in ESCO. So if we come back to the context of ESCO in EURES, the network of European employment services was there was a reform of this network, and in 2016 the Commission adopted a new EURES regulation. So the co-legislators, meaning the member states and the Council and the European Parliament, decided that the EURES system should be modernized or reformed, and at the center of this is also an exchange mechanism of job vacancies and CVs or job applications. And for this exchange mechanism to work, the Article 19 of the regulation says that the Commission shall adopt and update by means of implementing acts the list of skills, competences and occupations of a European classification. This is exactly why we are developing ESCO. So we are developing ESCO to serve as this list of skills, competences, occupations, and to serve as the European classification. Once the implementing acts are adopted, the next thing that will happen is that member states have 3 years, can take up to 3 years' time to either use ESCO on a national level or to map their national classifications to it. That means to create a correspondence table between the national classification and the European classification. And with this being in place, then all employment services will be able to refer to the same reference language and to exchange the information on European level and help job seekers to move from one country to another one. So let's take a look at the poll results then.
Yes, the poll results, and first I have to one comment of John
Yes.
Patterson. He says, in the first poll, several of the alternatives are relevant and equally weighted. So, but of course, we only gave you one possibility. You could not select everyone, and maybe you want to do everyone. So that is the limitation of this poll. And maybe that is again also here, because I do have 73% of the audience says conceptual challenges, incompatibilities between classification systems is the main worry. The second place would be lack of resources. Technical challenges, they don't foresee any technical challenges. So, well, maybe if they had more opportunities to select more, that would give a different picture. So, what do you think about this result?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I'm not so surprised that technical challenges do not feature that high in the results, because in the end, I think the challenge we are facing here is not so much an IT and a technical challenge. It's really a challenge of common understanding, of communication, and of conceptually bringing different things together. And it's very clear that this conceptual challenge is the biggest one that we are facing with ESCO, that we also throughout the whole development process of ESCO, that was very clear to us. And it's also not very surprising, because what happened over the past years is that in all the member states, kind of national standards evolved. There was not, there was no real coordination, so they evolved in parallel, different national standards. And now to bridge between these national standards with a European reference is something that is conceptually challenging. During this process, during the mapping process, this will be the main focus.
Okay, good.
And now I will talk to you about another very important aspect of the classification, which is the continuous improvement of ESCO. The Commission would like to ensure that the classification is fit for purpose for its various end users and applications. Why ESCO needs to be updated? As we know, in general, ESCO is never an ending project, in the sense that we will need to continuously improve it and update it. we would like to, we know that the labor market changes, new occupations emerge, the skill set needed to work in an occupation evolves, and other occupations becomes obsolete. For example, nowadays we don't have any more punch card operators, while big data analysts or vloggers are quite recent occupations. Education and training programs adapt to new requirements of the labor market, to new technological developments, but also to new scientific findings. Also, terminology changes over time. The names of occupation are often more short-living than the occupation itself. And finally, we cannot expect that the classification will be perfect from the day one. We need to know and to understand when ESCO works well and what we have to do better in ESCO by testing it in different business cases, like in job matching, in CV creation, career guidance, and so on.
Angeliki, may I ask you a question?
Please.
Because actually it's a question from Ria de Ketelen from Belgium. VDAB will use a mapping table competent Rome 3 to ESCO. How will there be foreseen, as she says, that the mapping tables be kept up to date?
This is a very good question, but I will let Martin to reply to this, since he's also representing directly the Commission. Okay. And maybe it's a good question for you, Martin, to reply.
Yes, indeed, this is foreseen also in the EURES regulation. So the European classification is not a one-time process. It will need to be updated on a continuous basis. And this means that mapping tables to national classifications also have to be updated, either if the European classification changes or if the national classification changes. Now, these updates, we will facilitate the management of these mapping tables by providing information on versioning. So whenever we publish a new version of ESCO, we will explain in the data itself, we will explain this occupation was split into two new occupations. These two occupations have been merged into another one, so that the person responsible for updating the mapping table doesn't need to review everything from scratch, but that it can be a very targeted update focusing on the changes that are happening. So there are mechanisms where technology can also do some part of the update, but it will also always involve a bit of a manual process, and a human in the loop that needs to be there during this process, but the versioning mechanism will help to keep this up to date. And in the end, it's something that is similar to what employment services are doing already now with international standard classification of occupations. All employment services are keeping mapping tables between the national occupational classification and the international standard classification of occupations, and also these are updated in the moment where a new occupation enters into the national classification, or if there is an update on ESCO.
And if I can complement of what Martin just said, it will be good also to find a way where the public employment services notify the Commission every time also that they do a change in their national classification systems. But this is, of course, something that we take into consideration, and we are in open dialogue with them, and I'm sure that we'll find a way to establish it as better as possible.
Before you continue on the overview of an improvement process, I have one question maybe that should be answered before we do that. It's a question from Leen Verachtert, in which he says, mapping classifications on the level of occupations seems not so complex. But how will we map classification on the level of competences, skills, and of knowledge?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, the thing is that with mapping of occupational classifications, we have a lot of experience, because employment services have been doing that in the past. We all have experiences of mapping to the ESCO classification, and we also conducted a pilot project with 4 employment services to test the mapping of occupations to the ESCO classification. In the skills classifications, we are planning to do another pilot project also with inviting the public employment services to this, to learn how to organize this process. I think mapping skills has has specific challenges compared to mapping occupations. One is that you don't have a very widely accepted international standard classification of skills like you have with ESCO in the occupation. So these international reference points that can already be used as a first base, it's for skills, this is not there. And also the skills lists and skills classifications of the member states, I think are differing a lot. There is more heterogeneity there than for the occupations. We are aware of these challenges. We know that that for the skills we will have to rely more also on language processing in order to facilitate the mapping process. But yes, so it's a challenge we are aware of, and we are eager to get started together with the member states and make it happen and to learn throughout the process.
Okay, good.
And then we can continue on the next slide, which is about the high-level process of the continuous improvement of ESCO. As you can see also in the slide, we have main 4 phases of the continuous improvement. We have the preparation phase, the scoping phase, the knowledge engineering phase, and the release phase, which I will go a bit more into detail in the next slides. So during the preparation phase, the Commission collects, analyzes, and structures the feedback with the help of the member states and of knowledge engineers. For this and for the development of the classification and for the collection of this feedback, the Commission consults experts for the content. In this case, includes social partners, but also education and training institutions, ESCO implementers, companies or organizations that test and piloted ESCO, and in these cases includes employment services, job boards, but also other Commission initiatives, EURES, Europass, and so on. They can really tell us what goes well on ESCO and what we can improve further. Big data analysis, which actually, for example, in this case, I can search what are the search terms on job board, what skills do employers select when recruiting for a specific occupation, and so on. And then we have feedback from those that they manage the national classification systems, in this case, you, the public employment services, which, of course, the changes that you decide to make are valuable and very constructive feedback for us to fit into the classification. The Commission, after analyzing, structuring, and prioritizing the feedback, will pass in the scoping phase, well, actually defines the scope of the next release. The scope of the next release can either focus on specific sectors of the economy or in new trends of the labor market, such as green skills, digital skills, or skills that comes from new created occupations. Like, for example, we said occupations that come from the third economy labor market, and so on. Then we passed in the knowledge engineering phase. Here, the Commission, together with the help of, as I mentioned before, of member states, representatives, but also of knowledge engineers, will develop the updated reference language with quality assured. They need to make sure that the content is of high quality, and then we'll translate the content in 26 language versions. And then, again, the Commission will consult the member states, which they will also double-check and cross-check the language variants in their according to their respective language that they speak and represents the country that represents. And during the release phase, once everything is fine and once the scope is defined, the Commission will use ESCO in euros through implementing acts, as Martin stated just before. Another aspect, a very important aspect for the release scope and the release phase, is the versioning. So here, as also Martin mentioned before, when we publish a new release, a new version, we will also publish information about what changes have been made in an old version of the classification. So like this, it will be easier for you or for the ESCO implementers in general to update their mappings or to update their systems accordingly.
Question from myself. The new versions every week?
Not really.
What can we expect on that?
It's a huge effort already. So it's these versions. It depends. I mean, the Commission first of all has to define the scope. I mean, when a new version is more, let's say, appropriate to be made. But usually we expect to have a release after like 2 years, or if we talk about small changes in the classification, about, for example, that comes to my mind now, it's like spelling mistakes or like issues that we can very quickly remediate. We can do it without having a new release.
Yes.
But when we talk about like major changes of the labor market, or from the side of education and training, then of course we need to do a new release. More often, yes.
I have 2 questions. I think they're quite interesting. One question is from Anke Stevenhagen from UWV in the Netherlands. She starts with a nice compliment. ESCO did a great job in developing the list of occupations and belonging skills. So that one you have. But we noticed the list of skills is not organized as a taxonomy. Does ESCO intend to make this taxonomy in the near future? Because this would help the PES to tackle the conceptual challenge in using the list of skills.
Yes. So this is true. The list of skills is in the moment structured in mainly by occupations. So the main entry point to the list of skills is through the occupations. There is a taxonomy foreseen for the transversal skills in ESCO, so that part of ESCO will be using a taxonomy. There are also some relationships between skills that provide some additional structure, but what ESCO does not have at this stage in the skills pillar is a top-down structure, a top-down taxonomy to organize these skills. This is a topic that we discussed and continue to discuss with the ESCO Maintenance Committee. So with the experts, the ESCO Maintenance Committee includes many experts from public employment services, from education training, from statistical offices that have a lot of experience in classifications and how to manage classifications. And together with them, we discussed this, and we are looking into different ways of providing further structure to the skills pillar over the next releases of ESCO. One option is to look into top-down structures. Another approach that we will be looking in is to form clusters of skills that have common characteristics. Another approach that we are looking into is skills contextualization. That means systematically linking transversal skills to more specific hard skills, and to explain how different transversal skills or knowledge areas are applied in order to develop the skills that a person needs on the job. So these are all interesting ways that we are exploring and that we want to test also in different use cases, and we are working closely together with the ESCO Maintenance Committee on that. So we will discuss it tomorrow in Brussels with them.
Okay, we're nearing the end, but still, so I have one question, but maybe you can just say yes or no, seeing the time. Will there be more user-friendly representation and possibility for browsing the occupations, qualifications and skills in ESCO version 1 than available now at the ESCO portal for ESCO version 0? Short answer?
Yes, so the new version of the classification will also come with a new version of the portal.
Okay, good. Then let's go back to the presentation.
So in our next slide, our intention was not to scare you with this picture, but rather to show you that we really test the classification. We really find ways to consult various stakeholders and to see if it's fit for purpose for its various services and use cases. So we learned a lot, and we will continue learn a lot out of this process. But we're also happy to announce you some very positive comments that we received out of this exercise. I will very quickly quote 2 of them. So according to a software company specialized in HR, ESCO has a well-extended list of occupations, skills, as well as a list of their synonyms, non-preferred terms, as they're used in ESCO. This allows regular people, non-taxonomy experts, to find the right occupation by matching it with the right skills. Another software company quote the following: "We have established that ESCO version 8.08, which is the version just before the publication, is a very valuable source of information for us. Our initial plan was to test how or if we can illustrate different career paths for individuals based on their skills and qualifications and help organizations understand the panel of skills required to stay relevant." So, of course, we are, again, very confident that we will continue the good work, and together, of course, with the help of you, the public employment services, member states, and various stakeholders. We also learned, we also get some feedback regarding the technical and the conceptual aspect of ESCO. For example, on the technical side, there were some concerns that ESCO will only publish in SCOS and RDF format. But this will not be the case, because we will, the ESCO implementers will also have the opportunity to download the classification either in XML or CSV format. And some of them, they requested also to have a more detailed technical documentation in order to learn in depth the technical, let's say, details of ESCO. And on the conceptual side, we discussed, we received a comment regarding the distinguish that we have now in ESCO between essential and optional skills, which according to an ESCO implementer, these relations are not really defined for the moment, and we should include the essential dimension of the skills mainly for the regulated professions and not for the whole list of occupations. So this is from my part, and now I will give the floor to my colleague, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. So towards the end of this pep talk, I would now still like to summarize a bit the next steps. I will be brief on that. So we are now a bit in the process of wrapping up the work of 6 years. We are in the last phase of consulting the member states on the translations of the skills. I think this continues until the end of this week. Everything is translated, the content of the classification is complete, and after that we will see if there are still issues that we need to tackle, but we will start to prepare then for the release, which is scheduled in summer 2017, and which you will find at the Commission website on ESCO, so on the ESCO service platform. After the summer then, later in the year, in October, 9th and 10th of October, we are planning a conference that focuses on using ESCO in implementations. All the public employment services will receive an invitation to this conference. The conference is intended to be organized in 2 different days. The first day will be more hands-on. It will include technical workshops, showcases from the pilot projects that we did. And it will explore the different use cases of ESCO. So it will focus on job matching, competence-based job matching, cross-border job matching. It will look into the education and training sector, into career guidance, finding training opportunities. But it will also explore the topic that we mentioned before, big data analysis and statistics. And then after this day 1, with the more practical workshops, we will have on the second day a high-level political event that will feature some keynote speeches, panel discussions, and that will place the ESCO project in the broader scope of the new skills agenda for Europe. And that will also, on which we would like to discuss more from a political perspective what these changes in the digitization of the labor market will mean. And with this, I will hand over to Gert-Jan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Martin. I would like to offer to the audience the possibility to do a workshop putting ESCO to work. It would be a hands-on practical session on using ESCO in search and match. So if you're interested in that, this is your time to make that choice and let us know that you're interested in such a workshop. Please do that right now. We hope you enjoyed this presentation, this talk about insights in ESCO. We hope you learned a lot. Please give us a little bit feedback, because there's also a feedback questionnaire on what you think of this format and if we did good. Any feedback is welcome. Well, Martin, Angeliki, thank you very much for joining us today. I think there was a lot of interesting news, and I hope the people also found that. I wish you a lot of success with, well, finally getting on top of that mountain. And,
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
And making it a very big success all over Europe. I like to thank all the people who have been watching. And again, if you missed something, or maybe you started late, that could also happen, or want to share it with friends or colleagues, use the link. It will be available right after we stop here, so you can always look at it again. And well, actually that's all for today. Thank you for watching.